All right. So, essentially, this is exercise 5, part 2. However, you'll notice in the actual exercise, it really talks more about the topography. And I think, honestly, one of the steps is just start to put together the model. And, that's not exactly helpful, I think, if you're beginning in this project. So, I mean, I think it goes without saying, we got to put these separate parts together. And I do think there's better ways than others, more organized ways. And to be honest, as a student, I kind of just struggled, copied, just made another copy, another copy. So, hopefully, this starts to eliminate some of the stresses that comes from putting multiple pieces together. However, I'm going to instruct a little bit more about the project and what you can do in order to make this, right? So I want to start unfolding things. I want to start showing you kind of the magic behind this program, and it is a little bit more advanced. So as we get started, essentially what I did, as you guys know, in my file, I essentially have all the exercises. So that's kind of my backup copy, right? So essentially I want to get my topography, my stair model, and of course, this is where you need to pick for exercise 3. So if you haven't finished exercise 3, I would definitely pick a favorite, and maybe the other two are just a little underdeveloped, if you will, at least at this point. Because the reason I made you make 3 of them was so that you honestly had a choice, right? I find it really weird that we have this beautiful program of iteration, and very often, especially in design studios, they kind of just limit you to one idea. And I guess that's okay, but the power of iteration and the ability to manipulate this so quickly, I think needs some praise. So, in my case, I really only did one for the tutorial. So I really only have one to show you guys today, but that's okay, at least for the sake of tutorial. And I'm going to go ahead and hide this so that I can save my GPU and my CPU and hone in. Now this is where that bounding box that I've created for each step is going to really come in hand, because now I actually have a placing point to put those all together. And to be honest with you, what I would do is probably group these at first. I know I haven't really done that for you guys yet, but I'd really group these separated parts, because as you'll see as we start to put them together, it starts to become a little bit difficult to accidentally maybe not get the right pieces, and really get disorganized. I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to group all 3 of these major components. That way, no matter what I click on in here, it's going to stay attached to that piece. For instance, if I'm trying to move the topography and I accidentally only move one slice, that's not really helpful. And in fact, I may even miss it and ruin my model completely. Now, not just completely, right? I do have a backup of this, so even if I accidentally destroyed it, I'll just bring in another copy. And I can't express that enough, how much of a time saver that is alone, right? Because, man, I can't even tell you how many times I've done drawings and I accidentally get the wrong marker out because, I don't know, my child put the wrong cap on. I thought it was blue and it was actually green, and suddenly I'm making a green sky, and I have to start the drawing all over again, right? Because, just mistakes, life. But again, another thing I like about digital technology is the ability to not really make a mistake. However, the first thing I want to do is maybe start to realize that there's some similarities between my model. For instance, my abstract model has this pretty hardcore vertical rhythm going on, and it probably doesn't make sense to put it right in the center of something or right in the middle of a stair. So the first thing that I could do is honestly rotate this guy, right? And maybe pick a better view. That's starting to match pretty well. And let's take a look from the top. It's actually looking kind of similar, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, maybe that circle part does go there, I'm not sure. And we could even make a copy and test it out. So again, what I really appreciate about this system is the ability to change things, the ability to quickly go, well, let's try it this way, and let's try it that way, right? However, as mentioning, this is where that bounding box really comes in handy, right? Because now I can take the entire piece, I can move it, I can lock in one piece to the actual other piece. And again, that might not be easy if you didn't make the bounding box, so you might want to get the bounding box first. However, that's looking actually pretty sweet if I do say myself. I mean, definitely chaos right here at this stair. And this is definitely where we have to start to analyze some things. Now, to be fair, this is why I did an abstract sculptural model and we did all these pieces separate because for the sake of the observation tower project, you can definitely now manipulate this entire piece. You can start to delete elements that you don't need, or move stuff or make things smaller that are possibly just generally in the way. I mean, this vertical wall, let's face it, you're gonna run right into it as you go up these stairs, and really the other side starts to not make a lot of sense at all. So let's try number 2, right? I did say let's move that one, so let's move that one as well. Again, adhering to my bounding box and the other bounding box. Honestly, that works better in some other areas. I mean, as we go up the stairs here, sure, I hit my head on this pole, but this is what I mean by we have to analyze it. And you'll notice what I'm doing is actually just going up the stairs. I mean, if you've ever taken D1 or D2, very often in review, what do? You walk your reviewer through the piece. You analyze together what that spatial configuration is. So in our case, yeah, I'm gonna bump my head there, I'm gonna bump my head here, so possibly this goes up. But I'm really just kind of between these two looking for which one is maybe easier or has better potential. Not gonna lie, I kind of like the center thing going with the center of that. It is kind of a nice feature, as well as this potentially shades this first deck area, so that might be kind of nice. Honestly, I see a lot of potential in both. So again, this is where you want to be the designer, right? You actually want to make the executive decision here and go, you know what, I think this actually looks better, is a better composition, and maybe doesn't ruin the sculptural aspect that I had. Because don't get me wrong, you can definitely remove too much. And I would ask you not to add, right? Because let's face it, we add usually for the sake of performance rather than the sake of art. And I do think we should keep that artistic ability that we worked so hard on in exercise 3. So do keep that in mind. However, I'm not going to grade it based on its design. But you might want to put this in portfolio, and especially if you've already taken D1 or D2, you already understand some organizing principles. So I would implore you to, of course, use them. However, once we've made that decision, I'm just going to make the executive decision today. And, I'm going to go with the more interesting one, So, sorry, number 1, you lose. You've been deleted. I guess you could keep that for future reference, but for tutorial today, I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. The next piece I could do is either put this model on the topography, or some would argue it's easier to put the topography. I only have to move one piece and get that into gear. So this is of course where you might need multiple views and relatively justify it. It's okay, if it's in the corner or on the other corner or even dead center. All of those are definitely fine. What I wouldn't do is rotate this. And you'll see what I mean later. The reason I say that is because, well, eventually we're going to make elevations and sections. And if you rotate that model, you're going to have to do a lot more work. So I implore you, if you've taken D3 or D4, you're more than welcome to go for the advanced. However, if you're just getting started with this program, I would recommend rotating the topography, not this straight model. Does that make sense, guys? That way in my views, actually the sculptural model and the stairs actually stay in an orthogonal way. Anyway, I know some of us are acutely listening and some maybe catching up. So I would refer to that in the video. I'm going to stick with the easier thing to do for today's studio. But keep that in mind. Usually you want to keep your architecture orthogonal, again, to match these views and to make it easier to manipulate in the future. But that's starting to look pretty good. This is where I maybe want to rise or fall my topography. And in my case, I do have this pretty unique orange stair going on here. It's kind of floating at the bottom, maybe not ideal, but actually making a lot of sense in terms of kind of going with the topography, going with that slope. Definitely not bad. And you really start to see that 6-inch stair compared to the 12-inch grade that we have on that topography. So I'm going to fake it till I make it. If it goes in the ground a little bit, that's, test it out. I mean, why not? Nobody said you had to keep every single stair. Nobody said you had to keep every single piece. However, it does mean we may have to manipulate and change some things because that just looks kind of weird. But for the sake of tutorial today, I think I've gone a little too far in the ground, so let's bring that back. and maybe just start with our last stair. You know, if there's room underneath, what they call a crawl space, that's perfectly fine. Now from here, I probably want to make a copy, just because that's like the best habit you can have in the digital world. I'm gonna go ahead and make a copy before I go and ungroup this. Right? Maybe I've made some executive decisions, I've made my placements, and now I can start to delete and refine. Right? So this is where it gets, I think, a little bit fun, and probably arguably takes the most time for exercise 5 part 2 is dialing stuff in. Right? So in my case, the first wall to tackle is definitely this one. So that may have to get smaller, and that's definitely okay for this part. Now I would ask you to try your best to leave it in its own position. However, if it's really in the way, I mean, you can also wire cut it as well. However, that would really change the unique shape and pattern that I think that's going on here. So in my case, I'm just gonna let it extend a little bit. I mean, there's definitely nothing wrong. I'm not changing too much. And not too bad, right? I mean, hardcore connection there, but yeah, you know, it looks pretty good. And if we take a look at it in the rendered view, you know, we definitely start to get a better idea of what's going on there. And again, you may want to use this view in order to start understanding the project. I'm going to bring that up just a little bit more because, again, I think they're going to hit their head right there. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit more. Maybe even interject with that other piece. That seems pretty nice. And maybe it floats on top of this quote-unquote ceiling that we're starting to create. You know, if I really wanted to dial in and make sure on things, especially in a studio class, I may even want to measure the dimensions, right, between that floor and this pole. So for instance, I would do DIM for dimension. Some of you guys know this all too well. I'd lock on to that step, hold shift, and give or take, right? And as you can see, I have 7.16 feet. If that is just absolutely annoying, double click on your dimension, go to length units, and make sure that's in feet and inches, right? So feet and inches, and that'll change immediately. Does anybody know the minimum requirement height of a stair and your ceiling? Pop quiz. 6'8", just the same as a door. That's the minimum. I don't think there's actually a maximum unless there's, you know, specific Sydney ordinances. But again, just, you know, some nice things that we can do. I mean, shoot, I'd have to make an entire model and measure it just to kind of figure that one out. So in my case, you know, definitely meets the requirement and it's not too short. People can pass through there in a scale figure. It's going to be tight, but a scale figure can definitely get through. But that might be helpful in realizing, well, maybe I do want that to be a little bit lower or higher. Absolutely up to you. But again, you can also be subtractive. So I am going to have to subtract from this model. As you can see, I either have to push or pull some of these items or move faces. And for that, I definitely want to go back to my shaded view. That's a little easier to look at, I think. Or you could just delete it altogether. However, I wouldn't recommend deleting much structure because, well, let's face it, at the end of the day, the structure is what's going to hold probably a majority of these together. And if that concept isn't really understood, take a look at some of the example models that are in the room, and I'll actually bring some of the good ones out after this tutorial as well. But you can definitely refine, is my point, right? Or even if they need to move, or, you know, for instance, maybe this one actually is in the way. What do we do, right? So as I was teaching you guys earlier, we can hold Option on the Mac. Oop. See if I can remember. I think it's accidentally getting that piece. Let's lock in. Let's get this guy. Boom. And what I like to do is, if I'm trying to move this face, I try to get it within the gray space. Do you guys see that? That way I know that it's not going to accidentally click on anything else. But let's remember my key commands. There we go. And it's like, hey, you mean this surface? Absolutely. And I basically just want to dial that one back. So I'm going to go right back to that pole. And again, what's nice is it's going to chop it right out of the way. I don't have to get wire cut involved, but I can essentially also just type in move face. We'll do it as well. But in my case, I just held Command and Shift in order to select that face. If you're in Windows, you'll hold Control and Shift to basically manipulate faces. It looks like I need to do it again, so let's take another try. Awesome. You can rotate it, by the way, too. That's kind of cool. Doesn't matter here on a circle. However, in my case, I'm going to hold shift and pull it back. That way nobody, of course, hits their head, and it actually still holds up this wall potentially. So again, we're kind of tinker toying it a little bit, but you know, bear with me. It does start to have I arguably say, a pretty cool tectonic effect. And you know, if you want a good example, actually, Kernodle's D4 studio right now, they worked on this as a project, right? They actually came up with the grid system first, and then started to manipulate that. And you can definitely see in some of the projects where that structure was allowed to kind of stick out, and for nice architectonic reasons. In our case, let's continue. And bear with me, guys, this does probably arguably take the longest, even maybe arguably more than exercise 3. And as you can see, there's just no way around some of these pieces, just delete them. And this is definitely the step where you can start to refine. And arguably we have a lot of these pieces, so it looks like I may need to move them down or move them up. And actually I think that might be okay. In my head, that maybe even starts to hold this ramp slash stair up. So again, some nice potential there. And again, I'll show you how to make this very unique piece on the laser cutter, and we'll essentially be putting it together like a puzzle. However, for the laser cutter, we need to really turn this into a digital puzzle first, if that makes sense. So a digital puzzle, right? So we kind of want to make all the pieces here. That way we can just cut those pieces out. Now, to be fair, you can cut things by hand too, even if you mess up, right? So potentially, it depends, especially as I was a student, I kind of did this and I didn't even realize what was going on. So I would cut them out in the laser cutter and go, oh crap, this doesn't work. I'll cut it by hand and make it work. But that definitely takes a lot more time. So there will, spoiler alert, there is going to be a part 3 for exercise 5, where we really start to get into the detail of making this exact part. But for the sake of part 2, let's just make the digital puzzle first. As you can see, this piece is definitely in the way, so let's get rid of that one. This piece is in the way, so let's get rid of that one. But again, I don't want to remove too much, so I may even make that smaller. You know, no big deal. Now, I wouldn't change the circle, but you know, if it needs to get smaller, that's totally fine. And this is definitely where you can start to manipulate that. I'd say the same about the structure. If you know some things are just not doing anything, it's definitely okay to get rid of them. However, I kind of like this effect, but it seems to be a little drastically cantilevered. I don't know, it kind of creates a unique space there. That's just me and my design talking, right? You know, thinking where it works. I kind of like that over cover, you know, to kind of have this feeling of pressing down on me spatially. So again, let's continue. Keep going up the stairs, keep on going. It looks like these will potentially hold up the stairs. So that's another thing too. I can take all this structure and lift it up as well. So I can actually either get some more headroom and again, delete things that I don't need anymore. Those were just used to make this. I don't need all those extra pieces anymore. And to be fair, this is also where I can turn off layers, but be careful, especially if the stairs and rails are really getting in the way. This is where being organized will definitely come in handy. So I can turn off my rails. Thank goodness I was working smarter, not harder. But this is definitely where all that layer stuff, all that work, all that organization really starts to come in handy. And again, I've made a separate copy of this, so deleting it doesn't feel like I'm breaking too many laws. However, you may realize, for instance, I have this plane and it's really only being held up by my vertical columns. I may actually even want to make a copy or just lift these up. Now, as long as they're remaining on those poles or on those vertical columns, you can start to hold those up. And as you can see, even tectonically, we can start to imagine, if you will, how that ramp sits on top of this structure. So again, kind of faking it till I make it. And yeah, definitely starts to make this much more open for that area. But let's continue, it's looking good. And you may run into something like this, right, where we have this large wall, and maybe I can't just lift it up because it's actually going to chop off this stair. So what I might want to do is actually wire cut it. Now, I do have some circles involved, so it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to cut this in a circular pattern, but let's get fancy with the spices, right? I mean, why not? I'm working in a circle here, so I'm going to chop that up a little bit. And after all, I do have circles in my project. So I'm going to take that circle, I'm going to move it a little bit so that it's maybe out of the way, and the way that it terminates with this plane is a little softer than something like super sharp, where it looks like it's going to chop somebody up. And make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, why not? So I'm going to take that piece, and I'm going to wire cut this piece. So wire cut, it's going to ask me which piece. I'm going to say this one, enter. It's going to say which direction, clearly in the wrong direction right now, so let's go with X direction. Let's cut completely through the model. Sweet. And as you can see, nice, opening it up, and arguably I probably could have gone a little bit further. So let's take that a little bit further. Let's get that back circle again, and move it just a little bit further. Sweet. I like it. Wire cut again. Slice and dice. Sorry, I come up with a lot of silly sayings. But definitely much more open, and arguably starts to remain that circular logic that I was starting to use in composition. So again, don't wire cut a star if you don't have any stars in your piece, right? However, if you have no circles in your piece, it makes a lot of sense to stay orthogonal as well. You know, I'm looking at some of the guys I know who have some pretty crazy stairs. This is going to be an interesting task, right? You don't want to eliminate too much and just have structure and stairs. You obviously want the stairs to work, so you may need to manipulate the stairs a little bit too. Some of you guys who went ham on some of those stairs, some of you have multiple stairs. Maybe pick the more simpler one. After all, we are going to have to physically make it, guys. So don't get me wrong, that is why I separate the exercises, so you can still have fun, you can still explore without really any detriment to the final project. In our case, let's continue. That stair's working now, you know, the bounding area up here is working, and yeah, we have a couple of Walmart columns going on, but I don't mind it. It also looks like we can potentially hold up something, and it looks like we have some leftover pieces, so let's get rid of those. Can't have any floating pieces. Can't express that enough. Whether it be 3D printing or laser cutting, we're not going to break the laws of physics here. So you do want to, quote unquote, kind of pretend, if you will, what's going on there. Again, potentially maybe this piece actually holds up that, so I don't know. It is what it is. But as you can see, we're starting to refine, starting to look pretty sweet. And actually, I can make certain things bigger, especially if I feel like I got rid of too much. And that's actually looking pretty sweet. Not too shabby so far. Some nice overhang. And again, you'll constantly see that I'm looking at the model from potentially every angle that I can. Uh-oh. We ran right into a wall. What do we do? Well, it doesn't look like we can just delete it. Doesn't look like I can really move it out of the way because I already kind of cut a hole in it. So let's cut another hole. Maybe in this case, let's show you the rectangular wire cut. So again, usually I'm trying to find the view where I see that, at least potentially. And you can also switch this to like a ghosted view. That way it's a little easier to see. And go ahead and draw that rectangle. Now in my case, maybe I want it to exactly line up with the stair, so I'm gonna just click on the stair. Shoot, work smarter, not harder, right? So in my case, I definitely want to make sure I hold Shift, or sorry, not Shift, because that'll turn it into a square. But I do want to make sure I don't accidentally click on anything, and this is why I normally have all 4 views open, by the way, so I can potentially see what it's actually doing. Another thing too is you could use some smart tools, right, and line up with something else first, and basically cut that out, faking it till we make it. But as you guys know, it's going to draw that in our planar view, so I might have to look for that. Not sure where I put it. Uh-oh, where'd it go? There's a circle. Where's my square? Or I guess rectangle. Is it here? I just don't see it. No. Well, let's draw another one. Maybe it didn't draw it. Rectangle. Oh, it locked into that view. So it's actually inside there. Let's get it out. Let's go back to a ghosted view. I might be able to see that better. And it looks like it is in there. Pretty difficult to see with the black. I may need to reorient myself. That's fine. I think it's in there somewhere. There it is. He was hiding. And it looks like I actually chose the wrong view. That's okay. I'll just rotate it and move it around. Obviously to meet my needs. There we go. Maybe a little bit higher. And I could actually dial that in too and just move it three-dimensionally. So boom, boom. And let's go ahead and wire cut that. As you guys know, the wire needs to be outside the object we cut. So I'm just going to move it out a little bit. And wire cut. Select that piece again. Oh, going in the wrong direction, that's fine. Let's switch the direction to maybe X and go straight through the model. Voila. We get that leftover piece and we can delete it. Almost looking like a little threshold, a little door kind of going through. It's pretty sweet. Now, for the most part, it looks like I ran into a problem, right? Especially with all these circles going on. I kind of like them floating though, especially the floating ones, but perhaps I get rid of the ones that are directly in contradiction of the stairs. So again, I don't want to get rid of too much, but let's face it, some of it's just in the way. I don't mind that though. I mean, that's okay. If it we have to go around the stair, I mean, it's not too shabby. If some faces are in the way, you might want to actually move those. Basically, that's the computer telling you, hey, these two planes exist in the same plane, and I don't even know which one to show you. But in my case, I may want to dial that in a little bit better. Take that piece and dial it back a little bit. Sweet. But yeah, we're starting to look pretty good. Honestly, ghost mode is kind of hard to look at, so I'm going to go back to a shaded. There we go. And not too shabby. Not too shabby. It looks like we have a little bit of cut there. I kind of like it. You could also use that previous piece, and it looks like I accidentally deleted mine. Oh, nope, still there. You can wire cut other pieces, right? I mean, shoot. If other stuff is in the way, cut it too. Cut, cut, go straight through. Take that bad boy off. I mean, if it's just really in the way. Obviously, we still have a little bit on that step. And again, you can dial it in holding Shift and Control if you're in Mac. Or sorry, Shift and Control if you're in Windows. And Shift and Command if you're in Mac. But yeah, you can dial those in at a click, you know. The stuff I wish I knew back when I was a student. And it's still operational. It's still kind of architectonic. It's still kind of locked in there. Pretty nice. But let's continue the stair, and as you can see, that one's definitely in the way. So we may need to chop from it again too. I might as well take that exact same dimension that I already have, copy it, and work with it, right? I mean, I'll take that known piece, chop it up, wire cut. Maybe we wire cut a few, I'm not sure. Wire cut, go straight through, knock those right off. And what's nice is it's still pretty sculptural, right? It still has the design intent, and that'll become important one day in Studio. So you don't want to delete or refine too much, but there's just some stuff that's just in the way, right? Just in the way. So make sure you're holding that command key and moving some faces out of the way. I usually go right back to my grid and right back to my grid because I don't want to get rid of the entire piece. And again, holding Shift as I move those so that it remains. I could also trim it, right? Or Boolean difference, but let's face it, that takes like 3 to 5 clicks, and this one just takes 1. So again, that one doesn't seem too much in the way. I kind of like the overhang too, so has the potential of possibly holding some other items up. I don't know, I could still move these. Let's move that one up a little bit more. Kind of like it taking advantage of that space in there, and it locks into some of the structure better. I like it. So again, dial it in. But essentially, exercise 5 part 2 is where you want to make a digital puzzle. So instead of just saying, hey guys, make a digital puzzle, this definitely sets to explain some of the ways that you can manipulate this project and you know, make it your own. Make it a little bit more believable, a little bit more practical. So let's continue, let's finish this off. We're making it up through the stairs, making it up, making it up. Oh, dang it, another wall. Is it in the way too much? Yeah, it's not in the way too much. However, we might actually need some more structure involved. So let's get some of that involved. I like this one, and well, that one was just to show you, but we'll take those up and get some more. So let's go ahead and copy and dial that in. And again, that's just to kind of hold up that wall potentially, right? Oh, got in the way on that one. Maybe we don't need it after all, or at least that weird one. So we'll just take those other two. That should hold up the wall just nicely. Although they're kind of extended a lot, so let's dial that in. Again, I'm just kind of picky about design, and I know some of us are too, so this at least makes them feel better about how picky they are with their design, which is never a bad thing. But let's face it, we run out of time. Sweet. And not getting rid of too much, but not getting rid of that essence of that structural quality. Some of this just feels like it needs something extra. And to be fair, this is a tutorial. In y'all's cases, I've seen some of y'all's exercise 3. It's going to need a lot of deleting, a lot of cutting, or a lot of manipulation. Feel free to still be sculptural with it. I can't express that enough, because it's very easy to accidentally remove so much. And actually, some of the reasons I kept some of these models is because they're great examples of where the stairs won rather than the sculpture one. And you really do want it to be this balance, I think, of each of those pieces. Lastly, we're going to start to show you how to manipulate some of the topography. But again, this idea of a digital puzzle, don't get me wrong, it's taken me years to master. If you don't master it in one 16-week course, do not beat yourself up. And in fact, that's kind of why we do this project. That way, you even have a little bit of practice before studio, right? Or before the design critique starts to be really heavily critiqued, right? Sorry for a lack of a better word. But in our case, let's continue. We have about 20 more minutes, so we're good. Let's continue. Going up, going up, going up, going up. Yeah, I kind of like that in the way, but that's a bit too much. So let's, you know what? I kind of like this idea of giving it a hat. I mean, why not? Go big or go home. And, potentially these have to go up as well. So again, holding Shift and Command automatically selects a face. Maybe, it's got a nice hat, as Baldaires would call it. Maybe even a roof. I really wouldn't call it a roof yet, but I know my project isn't honestly as cool as y'all's, because mine is just a tutorial to show off the technique. But again, get fancy with the spices. After all, this is potential for the portfolio. And arguably, usually we kind of need this project in our portfolio, guys, because most people recognize San Antonio College as a school that knows how to draw analog, but they usually kind of poke fun at us for having underdeveloped digital drawings, which is fine, because arguably their analog stuff is just as laughable. But anyway, I'm just throwing some shade. But in our case, again, we can still manipulate the structure. It doesn't have to stay the same. And again, just using Gumball. I mean, gosh, one of the greatest tools of all time, I think. I don't know why more programs don't have it. Just the ability to move in those directions. And again, another reason why we don't rotate that final model. Maybe I break the mold a little bit. I mean, why not? It's my project. It's my portfolio. I can break it if I want. But that's really only acceptable in computer graphics, right? Certain teachers, they don't like you to break the mold, and that's okay. Trust the methodology. But this would be my method, right? Of course, basically just going each step at a time, no pun intended. Now, let's further turn this into a digital puzzle. So again, just kind of getting rid of stuff that I don't need, like these sort of cliffhangers. I'm gonna get my rails back in there, make it a little bit better. And I can see, yeah, we're not actually gonna make the handrails for the model. You may have noticed, just the stairs are there. And let's face it, at this scale, you're just not gonna make those handrails. However, for exercise 6, we're gonna dive into the drawings aspect. We're gonna work with some Photoshop now and work with Illustrator and really continue that workflow. So don't get me wrong, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, even in a beginner state, but in our case, we want to remove stuff. You know, so for instance, like, okay, we know that these two pieces interlock. Which one should I remove? Do you guys know? Which one should I slice? The wall and cut a hole? Or should I cut this structure in half? Cut a hole. Why? Because structural integrity, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense that we have two columns going into a pole. It's just going to structurally fail. So Kayla is exactly right. We want to actually remove the circle from this piece. And that's what I mean by a digital puzzle. We almost want to make it like we could take this apart and actually have individual pieces. So the way that I want to do that, you guys already know it, Boolean difference or Boolean split. In my case, the wall and these columns. So I'd probably get, you know, every single thing that's locking into this. So I'd probably want to remove that one. I mean, my shapes are going to get real funky, so I do apologize for the sake of tutorial. But yeah, that's looking good. All the parts that basically touch that wall. And press enter, and voila. We have usually these leftover pieces. In my case, I have it set to delete input pieces. So if you could take a look at that, that's the digital piece we want, right? Where we already start to almost have a puzzle piece. I mean, I don't know a better word to express that, but what's nice is now I can send this to the laser cutter, and oh boy, now I just have to put a basswood stick right inside, and all right, I'm locking in my puzzle. And maybe glue it with a little bit of Elmer's glue, classic. I mean, you could go with the super glue, but let's face it, it's not forgiving. But that's looking pretty sweet. However, I'd keep it in its spot. However, some students do work in different ways. For instance, I like to keep it all in one spot. Some students like to take it out one piece at a time so they can actually go, look, sir, I got every single piece. And they can make sure that they got every single piece. Let's face it, some architecture has thousands of pieces, thousands of structure, thousands of columns. So the way that you want to be organized is key, as long as you're being organized, I would say. That's kind of the key rule there. But as you can see, it is kind of hard to tell which piece has actually already been turned into a puzzle or not. In my case, I have a pretty good memory. So now this is where it gets tricky. Not only is this piece being hit by the structural column, it looks like it also integrates into this wall. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but like a cardboard box, you can kind of select one piece cut and one piece cut. You can actually put them together and slide them together without like needing nails or glue. It's considered also, it's used a lot in Japanese architecture where they don't even use nails, they don't even use hammers and chisels. They literally carve the certain pieces to lock in together, and that's actually for some earthquake benefits, you know, not having a rigid structure. The more rigid, the more likely it is to break. Anyway, basic rules of architecture and engineering. But in our case, some nice potential for maybe this piece to lock into this piece. So maybe I Boolean difference or Boolean split that first. So in my case, I'm going to take this piece, Boolean split. I'm going to grab that one and this one first, hit enter. That way I actually get this kind of interlocking piece. Now, it did it for this one, didn't quite do it for that one, right? So I may want that leftover piece. So let's try that Boolean split again and change some of my options. Instead of deleting input, I'm going to keep that input. That way I can delete that exact input from this piece. Let me show you what I mean. So in my case, do that again. This piece from this piece, space. Oh, did the wrong one. Boolean split. Bam, bam, enter. So it should leave this piece left over. Awesome, right? Because I do want it to delete from here. This piece is good. You could probably hide it. Oh, did it undo that? Oh no, redo. My bad. Hide this one. Oh, it actually kept the original piece too, so I guess I'm okay. That's the one I want to hide. Hide it. Oh, sorry. Hide. And now we can delete from this one. So Boolean split again. And I guess I actually could delete the input here. Awesome. So now I have that piece there, and it didn't do it to this one. Let's find out why. Okay, solid. I don't see any issues. It is based on the order that I click, so perhaps I click on this one first and then this one. Nope, nothing. Is it because there's that little piece in the way? Let's find out. Let's go into a ghosted mode. That might be easier to look at. Maybe a lot harder to look at. Okay. But as you can see, there's kind of like this other piece in here. So perhaps we get rid of that one for now and try again. Let's try Boolean difference actually. That one's a little bit more orderly, and difference still means subtraction. So I want to subtract this one from this one. Ghosted mode is actually a lot harder to look at. Maybe not for you, but for me, I'm like, ugh. That was my best Professor Ryzen sound effect. So that's now looking like they're going to interlock, right? This piece comes in, comes over, and let me show you what I mean. Let's take those two pieces just to kind of show you a copy. Because again, I do these tutorials for further explanation. As a student, I ran into so many problems where I just spent hours like frustrated, confused, and you learn some things along the way. So definitely think it's beneficial to share those. Let's take a look. So if we move that up and we move this one potentially down, uh-oh, I accidentally deleted the other one, my bad. You can see it here though, and actually it still works, right? So if you take this piece and you slide it in, right, makes a lot of sense. It's going to stop right at that piece. So you don't actually need to delete it from both. My bad. But as you can see, potentially we can make a puzzle piece out of that. We don't actually have to cut them separately and then go, oh crap, they can't actually go together. We can actually figure that all here out in the digital realm first. So I can't express that enough. But I don't need that copy anymore to explain, so let's keep going. We got this piece going, and to be fair, it looks like we have two pieces in there, so I'm going to get rid of that one. Sweet. And that's the one we need, and that's the one we want to lock into. Next thing, now I need to actually delete these circles from it. So again, I'm going to actually take both of these, Boolean split. So this one, every single pole that goes through both of those, I need to essentially cut a hole into. So there's a hole, there's a hole. Feels like that's a song somewhere. There's a hole. Anyway. Let's get that one. Might as well get all of them, because even if they don't touch, it just, won't do anything. But that is looking good. Everything that touches those two walls. Enter. And voila. All right, we have all those little intricate pieces that hopefully were deleted. I think I accidentally kept all my pieces. Maybe I didn't. Let's find out. I think I did. Aw, man. I got all these little pieces to get rid of. So that's definitely where you probably want to delete the input, right? Because otherwise now you have to sit on each one and get rid of those. To be fair, sometimes when you actually move these, you'll see them anyway, right? But let's go back for the sake of tutorial and try that again. Okay, do they not have holes? Sweet. Boolean split. And I'm going to delete input. That's for sure. So again, just pressing everything that touches. Sweet. Enter. Ah, don't delete that one. There we go. And delete. That way we still have all those intricate pieces, and if you take a look, and I know I keep like having to move these out, but you can definitely start to see the potential of this, guys. A very specific piece, very architectural, very practical, and now it's a simple, wow, I just have to look at my digital model and start to put this digital puzzle together. Some of you guys probably did this as kids. Those of us who definitely took apart remotes and clocks and didn't know how to put them back together. Totally me. But you were just naturally intuitive into how things go together, and that's definitely something of a strong suit. I think with architect students in general, we know how to compose, we know how to put things together. We're sometimes artistic in other ways as well, in composition. Some of us are more sculptural, some of us are more poetic. So again, I really appreciate architecture and that it allows me to do all those things. But what I'm trying to stress is don't let the computer turn you into a machine. Let it be the machine. That's okay. It's what it does best, being a machine. You know what it doesn't do best? Be an artist. So don't lose that artistic factor that you work hard to translate into the computer model. So, however, for the sake of today, we have about 12 minutes left. So, for the most part, as you can imagine, we'll continue this, right? I mean, I'll kind of do and finish my puzzle piece, if you will, in the background, and we'll do a part 3 where we start to unroll each of these unique pieces, and the laser cut does the work, right, in terms of the complexity. We'll start to remove some of these stairs and maybe add in some mass. That way we can just either block this in or shoot. I mean, I could potentially 3D print, laser cut this piece and chop it in, right? So one thing I would stress also is probably don't laser cut yet, because I'm going to also show you how to make your topography a puzzle piece, which is arguably really nice to kind of slice it in or just have dowels already ready to be basically put into a hole. So anyway, yes ma'am, please. Certain size wood. So the question was, is there a certain size wood? We want to stay to scale. So 1/8 scale is the scale of this model. So potentially we might have to figure some things out. If we did like a foot, that would be 1/8 inch basswood, right? And if you did circles, I would get circles, right? Circle dowels. If I did squares, I would get squares, right? That's a good question. No, right? So there is such a thing. That stuff can be so thin. I would not cut vertical dowels or any horizontal with the laser cutter. It's just gonna fly straight through it. And it's honestly gonna warp the piece a little bit, right? You might as well just get some dowels that are specifically the size that you need, right? That's honestly the easiest way. That, and you'll soon find that the laser cutter actually leaves a lot of burn marks, right? And again, it starts to be another visual distraction. In fact, at Texas Tech, one of the things they taught us was if you use a laser cutter model, try to make it look like it was never laser cutted. So we're gonna try to get that aspect too. You guys should be a little bit familiar. That's kind of what we do with the drawings. We try to make them somewhat feel analog with that amount of line weight that we put. However, an absolutely great question. No, the laser cutter can only cut so thin. I would arguably say, like even like a tiny little scale figure at 1/8 will fly straight through there. You know, that little grid. So if we want to, I think it's a 5mm by 5mm. That's the technical smallest size, I think, before it actually falls through. So like 6mm by 6mm, that would technically probably be okay. It wouldn't fly through. Does that make sense? Which is 6mm is about 1/4 inch. So I mean, it kind of thick there, right? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Is it that solid mass? We'll get into it. So we're going to actually unroll these, and they'll be more or less actually hollow pieces. And if you want to start to maybe dissect some of the models, I'll bring up some of the good ones that actually have that aspect to them. You'll start to get a better idea of that we're basically almost making cereal boxes, except ours are much more complex than a cereal box. But we'll essentially start to fold these pieces together, right, as if they were complex geometries, right? But what's nice is once we make this digital model, in the next part, I'm going to show you how to unfold them. That way, when you laser cut them, you fold them back together. Making some sense? Thank you for the great questions, by the way. It's about time we get some good questions at the end of our video. So, any others, guys? No pressure going after those questions. All good? I would say, obviously, finish exercise 3. That one is a little bit late. Get on exercise 4. And again, it doesn't have to be a super awesome stair. I know some people really went ham on some of those stairs. However, I would even ask some of those students, now knowing what you know you're about to do, you might want to even make a different stair. So that is entirely up to you. However, I will leave it here for today and continue.